was thinking through it, and I honestly, I mean, for me, we built this program on NIL. We really did, and it's probably different than what you're thinking, though. We built this program in God's name, image, and likeness.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. With the best charm and the biggest arms, kissed half the women in Georgia and made them cry. Hope you guys are doing well. Been a minute since I put a video out. Been sick. I slept for like 15 hours Monday, but now I'm feeling better. Now this, I guess you call it an article, is a few days old. I've been branching out, doing more ACC stuff. This is a list on three, ranking the ACC coaches, and we all want to see our coach at the top. And I'm sure most ACC fans probably have a pretty good opinion of their coach. A lot of new people in the field, and now entirely new teams in the field. So conference realignment has been talked to death. I'm tired of it by now. Let's rank some coaches. So we'll go through this list, and then I'll give you my own list. Let's get into it. All right. So number one should come as no surprise. Dabo Swinney of Clemson. And it doesn't matter that you saw number two. We all know who 1 and 2 in this list are. Dabo Swinney, the most tenured coach in the ACC, everyone's favorite, I guess, underdog story, walk-on at Alabama, interim coach that was never meant to become their coach, fervent Jesus lover, his name, image, and likeness. And that's kind of, I guess, the charm with Dabo. Like, he says kind of corny things, but no one can take away the dude's won football games. 2 recent national titles. I mean, God, how many 10-win seasons did he have in a row? How many 9-win or more seasons has he had in a row? No one has had the success at Clemson that Dabo has, and few coaches, very few coaches, have had the success at any school that Dabo has. Dabo put an end to Clemsoning. If you don't remember Clemsoning, Clemson, like Georgia after Mark Richt, once Kirby came in, the thing with those schools is they could just never win the big one. You know, if they won their conference, they got in, the hunt for the big game. They couldn't win the big game, win the national title. Dabo did that, and then repeated. And as well, to Dabo's credit, has had 2 just generational quarterback talents in. Whenever I do this, I can never remember their names. Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, both of which are from my home state of Georgia. So Dabo, obvious number one. Anyone that would argue Dabo's the best coach in the ACC right now is not being honest with you. Number 2, Mike Norvell, Florida State. Now, if anyone's going to argue that Dabo's not currently the best coach in the ACC, it will probably be Florida State fans that will say Mike Norvell should be number 2 or number 1. The thing is, you can't put him over someone who has a recent natty, and who is as tenured and has as many wins as Dabo. But Norvell, if they don't leave the ACC in the next 30 minutes like everyone thinks they are. You guys, by the way, I know this isn't conference realignment. I can't tell you how many comments that I've got. I'm telling you, Rick. I'm telling you, buddy. Yeah, we getting out. I called a guy. We're out tomorrow. You're not. Anyways, can't take anything away from Mike Norvell. Look, at the end of Bowden's tenure, did Bowden miss a bowl before the end? He might have. Florida State was in a bad way. They did, hit it with. Why can I never remember anyone's name when I do videos? Jimbo Fisher, who they basically ran out of town after he won a national championship for them. But, they might say, like with what Gene Chizik at Auburn, on the heels of Cam Newton, maybe they think Jimbo just won that on the heels of Jameis Winston and some crab legs. But look, Norvell broke maybe the darkest history since Florida State's been in the ACC. Undefeated regular season last year. We're not going to get into the playoff snub, though. I will say no one was as vocal in support of Florida State online as me and C-Dog and I. Norvell's got things heading in the right direction. He's got recruiting heading in the right direction, commitment to the program. Their NIL is looking good. All that, Mike Norvell, obvious number 2. Who is number 3? Jeff Brom. Now, I think this is a little bit premature. Jeff Brom has 1 year of experience in the ACC and couldn't do much better other than winning the conference and or winning a national title, making a playoff run. He made a liar of me. I told everyone that thinks that Louisville is winning more than 8 games is out of their minds. Jeff Brom shut me and everyone else saying that up for last season and beat my team out of the gate. How many points did they come back from? 27 or something ridiculous like that. Absolutely. We ran them out of the stadium in the first half at the Benz, and they ran us out of the stadium and back across the city in the second half. But look, Jeff Brom came up, lived to his name, offensive guru and all that. Louisville, decided to stop hiring and then rehiring bad coaches to just piss down their throats like they have in the past. They let Arkansas do that now. Petrino. But yeah, Jeff Brom, you could make an argument for number 3. I just think 1 year in the ACC might be saying it might be a little quick on that. Number 4, Dave Doran. Now, this is the one that I absolutely disagree with. Dave Doran being at number 4 over some other people on this list. I know it says he's the all-time winningest coach at the Wolfpack last season. I mean, that's not saying much. That's like saying, I don't know, you're the most popular person in Canada. Like, does anyone really care? Justin Bieber, who cares anymore? Every year, and North Carolina teams have a fantastic track record of this. Expectation way up here, delivers way down here. Every year, NC State's a dark horse to win the ACC, and they never do. I don't necessarily think their recruiting is that great either. And if, it's okay because they are a talented team. It seems like they have a lot of talent and they underperform it. And to me, whenever that happens, you've got to point to coaching. So number 4 is the one on this list I most vehemently disagree with. There's no way I would have Dave Doran probably in the top half of this list, to be honest with you. Sorry, NC State fans. Number 5, Dave Clawson. Dave Clawson, I think, is underranked here. Because Dave Clawson coaches at Wake Forest, puts him this low on the list, and probably because he did not have a particularly great season last season. I know they've written stuff here. I can't, I'm not reading that. But the dude has done nothing but take 3-star or inferior talent and overperform it every year. There's probably not a season, if we looked on where Wake Forest was picked to finish in the ACC and where they actually finished, that he didn't overperform it. No one knew who Sam Hartman was until he was coached up at Wake Forest, and then Notre Dame bought him, right? So I have a ton of respect for Dave Clawson after the horrible debacle that was Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. Dave Clawson was on a short list of mine to hire at Georgia Tech. And had they hired Dave Clawson, I still think it would have been a good hire for Georgia Tech. All the respect in the world for Dave Clawson. I think he's snubbed a little bit on this list. Excuse me. I'm still getting over that, whatever I had. Mario Cristobal. I also think it's a mistake to have Mario Cristobal this high on this list. I think Mario Cristobal is this high on this list because he's an excellent recruiter. Well, guess what? Miami's never had, some tremendous problem with recruiting. Miami's never had a problem with talent, and they've fired coaches like clockwork every 3 years. What has Mario Cristobal done in 2 years to make you think he's any different than any of that? Plus, how can you have a coach, Mario Cristobal, on this list, above coaches who've won national titles before, who've won the conference before, which is something Mario Cristobal nor his team have ever done, and a coach, this is the only coach on this list that you can say directly lost them a game. Not he made a bad play call, not he didn't have the right personnel in. Directly led to the loss of a game by not taking a knee against my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. It might piss off Miami fans, but here's the thing. All Miami fans wanted to fire him after that game anyways. I think he's too high on this list. Bill O'Brien. Bill O who? This was a guy that people were talking about Georgia Tech hiring after Jeff Collins. And at the time, Alabama was getting ready to fire him, and nobody wanted him. I think it says a lot that he's ended up at Boston College after their coach said, I'm tired of all this NIL and portal nonsense. I'm going to the pros like some other coaches have done. Is anyone excited about Bill O'Brien? Does anyone think Bill O'Brien, is going to do anything at Boston College? I mean, he's probably a good fit at Boston College, a ton of pro experience. He went to Penn State and did a good job after the awful atrocities that happened at Penn State. I'm just not that impressed with Bill O'Brien. Another guy I think is way too high on this list, and I think there's a lot of people on this list that don't get enough respect. Rhett Lashley of SMU, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know anything about. I think he went like 12-3 or something, won his conference last year. Has had several. Yeah, he went 11-3 last year. Top 10 in scoring offense, yada yada yada. Here's the thing, I don't know how he's gonna do in the ACC. Don't know how he's going to do against, Power 5, I guess doesn't exist anymore. Power 4, Power 3 now. It's apples and oranges. I don't know how he'll do in the ACC. More will have to be revealed. Another guy, I think. How do you have him ahead of Mac Brown? How do you have Rhett Lashley coming in with SMU ahead of Mac Brown, who went to the conference championship last year, who has a national championship ring, albeit with Texas, in 2010 or something. Now, though I don't agree with Mac Brown being at 9, it is hilarious to see Mac Brown at number 9. If you talk to North Carolina fans, they're already ready to fire Mac Brown. They're ready for him to retire. Mac Brown is so desperate that he hired an absolute doo-doo barrel coach in Jeff Collins. Jeff Collins, a guy that by the start of Brent Key's first official year had already won more games than Brent Key did in what, 3.25 years? Absolutely embarrassing. A guy that had the worst defenses at Georgia Tech in Georgia Tech history, a guy that doesn't wear socks, and a guy that really likes tight shirts and men. So Mac Brown's desperate, but having him this low on this list is insane. Having him, I mean, they have Mac Brown behind two coaches that have never coached in the ACC and one team that has never played in the ACC. So, shows you what this guy thinks of Mac Brown. Pat Narduzzi really gets a lot of flack these days. He's had internal turmoil with his team. He got in a Twitter spat with his own players that didn't look good last year. But having him at 10 and behind some of these other guys on this list, I think is frankly insulting. Like, you forget, I've got his record pulled up here. I mean, look, the guy is averaging about 7 wins a year. Has been won an ACC title in 2021. Didn't he make another appearance? Yeah, 9-4. Like, the guy's had a pretty good run at Pittsburgh. I'm not saying he's the best coach in the ACC. A little bit disrespectful to have him at 10. And again, behind not just coaches, but teams that have never played in the ACC before. Also, Narduzzi, I will always kind of have a special place in my heart for how dirty Jeff Collins did him by ripping his hand away from him after he beat Collins. Collins ripped his hand away like he was trying to start a chainsaw or something. Absolute embarrassment. Number 11, Brent Key. I'm not mad that he's this low on this list. Honestly, I would love it if he was last, because Tech does best when no one expects anything of them, minus when Jeff Collins is coaching them. But Brent Key should be higher on this list. And that's not just the homer in me saying this. When you look at what Brent Key took over, and if you haven't watched the channel before, I've said this, like, who do you think could have taken over Tech and what Brent Key did with how Jeff Collins, Jeff Collins had players chasing each other with pool noodles and cardboard cutouts of players. That was the kind of grab ass stuff that was going on at practice. Who could have taken over and done, you guarantee would have done a better job than Key did as interim and then up to this point? I don't think there's a lot of coaches. He's in a rebuild. I think he's done a fantastic job. And one thing that I don't think is talked, that's kind of under the radar with Key, is I think he's actually building a sneaky good staff. You look at Buster Faulkner, you look at the turnaround of the Georgia Tech offense. Now we got to see what he can do with turning over the defensive staff. But don't sleep on Brent Key. I'm not just saying that because he's my guy. Brent Pry. Virginia Tech is kind of on the upswing. They finished strong last year. Seems like they're putting some things in place. I admittedly don't know a ton about Brent Pry. They're still kind of searching to get back to that success that they had in the Big East and toward the beginning of their time in the ACC. Was Marcus Vick their quarterback when they were still in the Big East? Maybe. But they've had some pretty athletic quarterbacks, had some pretty good quarterbacks. We'll see if we can get back. I think he's a little low on this list as well. Manny Diaz. Now, Manny Diaz I'd have above Brent Pry probably. Been a coach in the ACC before, coached at Miami. And really, in my opinion, his tenure at Miami is very similar. I can't remember the guy's name that was at Auburn. That basically, the minute they signed him from Boise State, they were ready to fire him. That seems like a similar situation with Manny at Miami. he takes over after, Mart Rick is there, and, seemed like just an unfortunate set of circumstances where probably the signs of Parkinson's were affecting him toward the end of his career at Miami. Went to Penn State, has had really, really good defenses. I mean, the guy's a very, very good defensive coordinator. He's taking over a tough situation at Duke. And I said this when I was live streaming when Duke beat Clemson last year. I said, I'm so happy for them now, but I'm so heartbroken because their coach is going to get hired and their team is going to get gutted, which is exactly what happened. I think Manny now has the experience, and the mistakes have been made, and he's learned from things and built, his way of doing things enough. He can be successful at a place like Duke. I think this is a really good hire for Duke. Don't sleep on Manny Diaz. I think in 3 years, people will look back and say, man, this was a good hire. Justin Wilcox at Cal, I don't know anything about him. I don't watch much Pac-12 football. This is probably appropriate to be here on the list. I don't think they've done necessarily well in recent history. Not much I can say about it. I don't think he's been there that long either. Troy Taylor at Stanford. He went 3-9 last year. Stanford, in a bad way. And Tony Altomore brought this up. Cal and Stanford are not that far removed from having a lot of success at football, especially Stanford. They're down now. I don't know much about their coaches. They're probably appropriately ranked on this list. I think they're both not far removed from Division III level coaches. See what they can do in the ACC. See if they can kind of get back to that success of yesteryear. Man, it feels bad to be a Virginia fan. Embarrassing for Tony Elliott, and I don't disagree with his spot on where he's ranked here. When you're dead last behind three coaches who have not only not coached in the ACC, their teams haven't played in the ACC, you're in a bad way. Tony Elliott, what year is he on his contract? I mean, if he doesn't have some sign of improvement this year, he's probably gone. Had a ton of success as Dabo's OC at Clemson. Has had some upset victories, had some good showings, beat North Carolina. But honestly, who hasn't beat North Carolina? North Carolina hasn't even beat Tech in the last 3 years. So maybe that's not as impressive as you'd think. But yeah. So that's their list. So let's kind of recap that. Let's stick there. Here's the original rankings. They had Dabo at 1, Norvell at 2, Jeff Brom at 3, Doran, Clausen, Cristobal, O'Brien, Lashley, Brown, Narduzzi, Key, Pride, Diaz, and then pulling up the rear, the caboose, Wilcox, Taylor, Elliott. And I'll just show you my list. Don't disagree, Dabo, Norvell. I'd put Clausen at number 3. And a lot of people are probably going to say, Rec, you're crazy. I'm telling you, Dave Clausen's a good coach. And he's done more with what he has than I think most people on this list. I'd put him at number 3. 4, we'll just switch him with Brom. I don't have a problem putting Brom at 4. Shown that he, it's not all hype with him. Went to I think that's their first conference championship appearance in school history, isn't it? In ACC. Then I'd put Mac Brown at 5. As much as I clown him, the dude's won a national title before. He has severely underperformed his talent. He has won a good number of games at North Carolina now. It's pretty disrespectful, I think, to put him to 9. I'll put him at 5. 6, I'll put Pat Narduzzi. Look, don't forget the guy won an ACC championship recently, had a good year last year, had one bad year really, or horrible year, and all of a sudden they put him, I forget where they put him, way down on the list at like number 10 or 11. I'd put him at number 6, though. 7, I'd put Dave Doran. And the only reason I put him above Cristobal is that he's just been in the ACC longer. They have about similar results. Doran's underperformed his talent most of the time at NC State, and so is Cristobal. We'll put Cristobal at 8. He's only been there 2 years. Haven't seen the results yet. And by the way, I made a bet with a Miami fan, and if Cristobal didn't refuse to take a knee, I would have had to pay that guy $100 because we wouldn't have made a bowl had he not done that, and that was my bet. So maybe I should have put Cristobal at 1. We put him at 8 here. 9, I'm going to put Brent Key. I think that's appropriate. I think that's fair, and I think people might not agree with me. I think that shows I'm not a homer. He just doesn't have the experience as a head coach to really put him any higher. In fact, you really could make the argument to put Diaz above him. I wouldn't even necessarily argue with that. But I think Key's shown that his lineage is serving him well with Nick Saban and George O'Leary. I'm excited to have him at Tech. I think he's the right man for the job. I think he's doing a good job. 10, Manny Diaz. Again, I said don't sleep on Manny Diaz. I think he's learned from kind of how things have gone in the past, and I think he's going to turn things not turn things around at Duke, because they were as good as they've ever been probably since, I don't know, Steve Spurrier. I think he can get them, rebuild them from this kind of being gutted phase. Then Brent Pry at 11. Am I keeping track of this right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, Brent Pry. Now, a more thought out YouTuber would have just numbered these off the bat. But sometime, look, when I played football, I took one too many shots to the cocoa nut. Brent Pry, look, a guy I don't know much about. I just know he seems to have them on ascent. They finished strong last year. 11 seems fair. 12, Lashley of SMU. That's just because I don't know much about him, and you can't really tell how good of a coach he is because he hasn't coached in a conference like the ACC before. But he is the most successful coach of the coaches coming into the conference. However, they were in the Pac-12, and the Pac-12, and this is heartbreaking, was a pretty dang good conference last year. Hate to see the implosion. Bill O'Brien, I just don't understand the hype with him. I don't understand why people wanted him at Tech, what the grand appeal is with him. Probably a good fit at Boston College. We'll put him there, though. And then I've got Wilcox, Taylor, and Elliott. Elliott, honestly, I probably should have put Elliott above Wilcox and Taylor, but I was biased by the previous list, and I just didn't want to change it. Again, Wilcox, Taylor, I don't know much about. I don't know much about Cal or Stanford. Hopefully that they can improve their programs. That would just be good for the ACC. And Elliott, I think, is just on the way out. I can't believe I did this. I'll have to edit this in. I totally forgot about Syracuse. That's the coach they have at last, Fran Brown, which might be the one I disagree with the most. Like that he's killed it in the portal. Like they have a really strong portal class. Brought in a lot of strong players. It seems like they've I don't know, doing things right. So sorry, Syracuse. I think you got done dirty on this list. Guy's a former Georgia assistant, so look, he's been around success. I would put him. I would have it at the end: O'Brien, Fran Brown, Wilcox, Taylor, Elliott. Fran Brown, if he can really get some talent in there, watch out for what he might can do at Syracuse. Back to it. Now, I didn't think about this, but coaches, that are on the hot seat this year, that's probably a good question. As much as I hate to say it, Narduzzi might be, just because of there was, I feel like there were some things behind the scenes that probably weren't great. I don't agree with it. I think there were some rumblings of that. Brown could be. I don't know. I think for Brown, it could be like a forced retirement situation, kind of like, or a forced mutual parting of ways, like Mart Rick in Georgia. We all kind of know that really wasn't Mart Rick's decision. Obviously Elliott, and I don't think anyone else on here would be on the hot seat. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with the original list? Do you agree with mine? What does yours look like? Let me know in the comments. Y'all have a great day.